This is Country Music Dads, the parenting podcast with a twang. We're driving a highly subjective, comically contrarian, often irreverent conversation about fatherhood and country music for people who have a passion for both. My name's Donnie, and I'm a country music dad. And I'm thrilled to welcome back Dave to the show.
Thank you, Donnie. It's great to be back, especially for this episode. We are incredibly pleased to welcome Waylon Jennings to the show. He is a Grammy-winning producer, a singer-songwriter, and the guy who put the O back in country back in 2005. He's also the son of Jessi Colter and Waylon Jennings, and he's on the show to discuss his most recent project, Songbird, the first of 3 albums comprised of his dad's unreleased, previously recorded songs. In early October, Shooter and the team released this album into the world. Within a week, it was on 5 different Billboard charts and is proving very sticky. For good reason, because it's an incredible project.
Yes, indeed. This is a big one for us, and we're honored to host you, Shooter. So thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on the release. Let's get into it.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad it's out. It's all started now,
Indeed. Speaking of how it started, I know you've told this story a million times. I've read it in many different places and heard it in different places. But for listeners who may be wondering where this new Waylon Jennings album came from in 2025, could you give us a little bit about the discovery of this cache of songs and how that all came to be?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I always knew that my dad took tapes home from when I was young. We had a room in our house that was locked all the time called the storage room. And it had all these tapes and had guitars and Rhodes gear or whatever that was here. And he didn't want anybody messing with. I always knew about it. And after he died, about 6 years after he passed away in 2008, Nikki Mitchell, who ran his office, and Richie Albright and Linda Albright and Carter and Barney Robertson from the Wailers got all those tapes and all of Richie's tapes and went and had them put in vaults and had them digitized in 2008, right? So when that happened, we had them, they were on these big Firewire drives, and that was the year after my daughter was born. So it was my life was in no place to try and even go through all this stuff. But I knew that I had it. I had access to it. And then in 2014, it got transferred from those giant Firewire drives to a RAID array of drives. It was small and portable. And so we made a duplicate copy of it, and I took that copy. So I had it in 2014, and I actually opened it up when I was doing an album of mine that was a tribute to Giorgio Moroder called Countach. It starts with "Don't You Think This Outlaw Bit This Done Got Out of Hand," and kind of evolves into this Giorgio Moroder-esque thing.
Don't you think this outlaw bit this done got out of hand?
And that was the first time I actually went into the files, because I opened them and I saw it was just buttloads of session files and audio files and no labeling, so I just kind of targeted one and opened it up, and it was outlaw bit. So I was oh wow. And I looked at it, and there was this wah-wah guitar that I know was Tony Joe White that had been muted from the original, and we left it in our thing. And so that was the first time I kind of messed with it. And then I kind of shut the door on it again, because it was just so much. It was an overwhelming task. And I thought I didn't really have the home studio to really go through it and do it right. And so it kind of sat on the shelf for about 6 years. And then in 2020, I was in the studio in June of 2020 doing this record with Yellow Wolf called Sometimes Why. And I was in Studio 3, which is the room at Sunset Sound, which is the room that I rent now full time. But I loved that room, and I was recording that record in there. I asked Nate Hazley, who was the assistant engineer on the session, to maybe help me go through it. Because I thought, because we're 2020, everybody's down, this would be a good time. But then still, I would have had to rent a studio. I didn't really have a good home setup yet. So it just kind of wasn't right. And then once I got in the studio in 2024, I moved in February, and I did an AJ Croce record and a Charley Crockett record. And then I had a couple other things. And then I had another big record in June. And then when I got about a week before I started in June of 2024, this person canceled on me. And I was I got a whole month let's just try, let's open it up, you know? And so me and Nate Hazley, the same guy that I talked to back in 2020 about it, now he's like the full-time assistant at Snake Mountain in my studio. So like he and I paired off into two computers and opened up the drives. And in fact, they wouldn't work at first. And they were like corrupted. And I had to go take them to a place for them to like restore it and everything. Nate was like freaking out, but I knew that there was another copy somewhere, but I still wanted it to work. But we got it to work and got in there and made a new copy. And then we just started going through it. And, you know, it was like a lot of work because since everything wasn't labeled, we were having to kind of just sit at the computer and the minute the lyrics happen, type them in and see if we can find it, you know? And in most cases we couldn't. There were a lot of them we could not for a long time figure out what was going on, you know, but eventually like it all kind of came into focus and some of it's still a mystery. I'm still finding, but anyway, to answer your story, that's how we got there. That's when I went through it and it took us about a month and a half and then started work immediately on like mixing and getting Songbird prepared.
As a listener, it's almost surreal to hear your dad's voice sing these songs we've never heard from him before. When you were first listening to these recordings, what was going through your head? How did you feel?
I was like, man, this has got to be AI. I was kidding. I was like, George, man. No, I like same reaction. Like I was expecting like when I was young, late 90s, like probably right before I moved to LA, he found a tape of I'd Like to Love You Baby and it played it for me. And I remembered it. Maybe it was even longer ago than that, but it was something in the 90s. He had found this tape of this old song. And I remember thinking, wow, this is awesome. It sounds just like his hit songs at the time. Like, why didn't he ever release this?
Well, I'd like to love you, baby, and keep my other baby too.
You know, and it's just something that went by the wayside and he always liked it, you know? So I thought at the very least, I'm going to look for I'd Like to Love You Baby in there. Cause I knew that existed. I didn't expect the sheer volume of stuff, but like when you go back and when you look at it in retrospective and you kind of figure out what was going on and why all this stuff was released, like it all starts to kind of paint a picture of what was going on. But at the same time, it's like, man, I had the same reaction. I was like, I can't believe I'm hearing this. This is wild. I can't believe all this is in here. I mean, when I heard Songbird was like the fourth or fifth song that I found. And I was like, whoa.
For you, there'll be no more crying.
No idea. I had no idea he had done that. I knew, you know, he did at one point Gold Dust Woman and Rhiannon, but I never knew he had done Songbird. And that's like one of my favorite songs on that album, on you know, Rumors.
And I feel that when I'm ready, it's all right.
Anyway, it was surreal, you know, and then I immediately thought like, I got to get this out there to like, so you would have that reaction, you know, like that's the thing. It was so powerful. I was like, dude, this is going to make like a lot of folks happy, you know, and maybe heal some people in some ways, you know.
You've talked about how you did this for fans because you got the experience, just like you just said. What are you hoping they take from it? What are you hoping fans grasp from this experience? Or is it more just you want it out there so that they can experience however they want?
Yeah, that's how I feel. I don't want them to take anything necessarily from it. Just, you know, what I think it's a cool display of like the man and what he did, like versus like the myth that kind of perpetuates after people die. You know, I feel like he just loved music and he loved cutting music and loved recording. And to me, you know, there just wasn't any like outlaw bravado involved in anything. It was just all this kind of innocent, creative exploration kind of thing. And it was really cool because like basically like the bulk of the material, like the material kind of spans from when he won this battle with RCA in like 1973 and 74. And that's when they first started recording on their own. And so I have stuff that goes back that far and I have stuff that goes into like the 90s, but really the bulk of it goes into like 80-ish. It like, if you were to look at the volume of stuff, if that was all lined up, it would look like this because like in like 77, 78, 79, 80, it's just like crap loads of material. And it's like, they were just, and during that period, he was renting the Cartier Brothers studio full time for the whole year. So the minute they get off the road, they just go right back in, record a bunch, go back out of the road, come back in, record a bunch, go back on the road. Like even in here, there's some recordings by like bands I've never heard. Like there's like a rock band in there that sounds like, I don't know if it's like Jerry Bridges' son's band or if it was like maybe like when they were on the road, they would rent out the studio to people. And this is just a band that recorded in there and I ended up with their recording, but it's like definitely like 1980 rock, like really interesting, so there was definitely a prolific period around I've Always Been Crazy and the albums to the left and right of it.
When you were a kid, how did you experience your mom and dad as musicians? Were you on the road with them?
Yeah, I was on the
Did
road
you?
like from the time that I can remember. They took me on the road until I started school. And so, which was, not always like they weren't like country tours were different than rock and roll tours, especially then. So there was a lot of like weekend runs. There'd be some crazy stuff going overseas and all that. But like once I started school, I would go in the summers. When I was on the road, yeah, I remember the bus, sleeping in the bus. I remember the shows. Like, I still get like kind of tired at concerts, I think subconsciously, because I was always like going to sleep around that time when I was a baby, when the concerts were on. And cause like whenever I go see concerts, like it could be Metallica or whatever, like I'm just like yawning in it throughout the whole thing. I don't know why. Honestly, you don't really know the difference until you get around other kids and realize like, oh, like everybody's parents aren't musicians. But in Nashville, you do have the music business is a thing. So like people are aware of it. But I just remember music being just kind of permeating my life from day one.
I can relate to the yawning at concerts thing, but that's more of like a dad thing. Our stage of
Right.
life.
Same.
The show starts late.
I mean, I'm older than you guys, I think, right? I'm 46. How old are you guys?
Yeah, I'm 41.
Yeah, we're in the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
general
we're
area.
General area.
It's okay. Well, let me tell you guys
Yeah.
where I'm sitting.
Let's talk about the Songbird production a little bit. How did Waylon as your dad and your relationship with him influence the project versus Waylon as the artist and your relationship to his music?
I think I looked at it all from Waylon the artist and his music, honestly, when it came to what I was trying to do with the album. And there's things in there, like the personal touches were to me, like I wanted to leave in all of the cracking up or the breaking, like when the drums kind of fall apart and all those little moments where he talks and stuff. Like I wanted to leave all that in there because I thought that was cool. Like that's so much cooler. Like I made some choices in the mixing that I thought were they were different from the records from that time that he released. Like I used less reverb on his vocal than they did, and I like beefed up the EQ of the kick drum to kind of bring it to where it was like more like modern records. Those are the only two choices I made because I felt like his voice, like being drier and you being able to really hear him, made it better. And we weren't covering it up. And then I wasn't cosplaying the album as like a 70s album. I was trying to like make it modern. So I just kind of kept it wide open. I didn't fade anything and I didn't oversaturate it with classic effects and stuff and really kind of let the music that was on the tape talk because it was recorded so well and the arrangements were all there. Like the stuff that I added besides Elizabeth Cook and Ashley Monroe on the title track, which was kind of an anomaly for the album, but the rest of it was 4 of the living members of his band, the Wailers, just brought them in now to like, if it felt like it needed another guitar or the piano wasn't there or something, we would just have them do it again now, all these years later, so that it would sound like the rest of it, Like I felt like what I could do was maybe like what I could do in the studio that I didn't do any, like there was no plugins and I was not using any digital manipulation or processing of any kind during the record, but I used Pro Tools as the storage medium and as the editing medium. So in some of these situations, I think I was able to get the songs like where they were supposed to be. Like I said, most of them were all completely done. But in the case of like After the Ball, which is one where it felt like they had gotten it done, he had done multiple vocal takes. So I'm like going through and able to cop his voice like I would do anybody else and all this, but there was no keys on it or there was no second acoustic or something on it. And then there was second take where they nailed it. The ending thing that was going on. And I was like, I'm going to put that there because like this other take was so good and they matched up and I was able to do it right there. And it really kind of, without doing anything, just settled that song in its place where, maybe they didn't feel like they had done it, but
After the ball is over, after the ball, if you cannot stand, I've got a place for you to fall.
otherwise, and that's the only one on this one that I did that to. I did that to another one on one of the other ones, but otherwise, like I was making the decision of like how to just finish it out and then mix it and make it feel as great as all his other great music, and really kind of serve the songs and the recordings in that way and be coming from a perspective of as a fan of his music, My personal thing with it was definitely there. And getting to go through this whole other chapter with my dad was amazing. Like getting to see really him and Richie, and I'm Waylon Jennings, and I carried both their names. And this was really their body of work together. Like Richie was the engineer. He knew how to produce. He was producing stuff. My dad and him would co-produce Hank Jr. and projects because Richie would run the board. Like he knew how to do all that. So really all this stuff is their body of work together. Cause I don't think if my dad had Richie, this stuff would have been there. So to be able to kind of do that for both of them and feel like I went into this work that, the door got shut on it because the times changed. Like all that material, they didn't know it, but like as they were doing records, like my dad would like pull from this material. Like they were going in off the road into the studio all week, back on the road, back off the road into the studio. And he was cutting everything. Like it might be Songbird, it might be an obscure artist like Isaac Payton Sweat that wrote I Hate to Go Searching Them Bars Again that like nobody knew, but he found that song, he loved it.
I hate to go searching them bars again, picking up bruises and scars.
Or like a situation with Johnny Rodriguez, the cowboy, which I think could have been a co-write, but even though it says on Johnny's album it was just him, it just felt like it was, but I felt like it was definitely written for my dad or something because he cut it before Rodriguez and maybe just didn't make it.
My long shaggy hair and the clothes that I wear ain't fit for no big fancy bar.
Either way, he would like pull from this stuff over the years. Like even later, if he needed a song for like an 84 album, he'd pull something like 76. But what happened is like around 85, 86, I don't know the year exactly, Richie had to take a break. So, and my dad started working with producers again. So it was like the 80s were happening. The digital sound thing happens. Everybody's using digital tape at one point in the late 80s. And my dad starts doing like when he did like the Eagle.
Something's gonna go to ground when the eagle flies.
And like 87, 88, 89, these records, he starts working with producers and the sound of the 80s has now taken over. So all of these guys, Cash, everybody like are doing all these records with even Chips Moman, but even like the synthesizers and stuff they were using. It's like it was starting to take over and all of those guys tried to adapt to that. So this material like became outdated in sound. It wasn't with Richie. It had Richie on it. It had this kind of, the book was opened and closed within like a 10-year period on this material, and what didn't get used was kind of what happened, So once I kind of went through all that and figured that all out, it felt like a really cool journey to go along with my dad and with Richie. But also to answer your question, it's really was always the mindset is about the music and the fans and delivering that,
Yeah, the timing is really interesting too, because you said 73 to 85, so this is the period of his life right before you come into his life, or when you're a young child, probably before your memories of him start. So that snapshot in time is pretty cool.
Yeah, there's like a song. It's not on this. It's on the next one, and it's awesome. And it was recorded like Christmas Eve, like 79, which is the year I was born or something. Like we were able to kind of pinpoint down to the date on that one. So it's cool, like see the pre and post. Like, I was born in May of 79. So like, it's just interesting, like we're around that period. I was able to kind of figure out like what periods by the layout of the sessions, because like when he was in the Cartier studios, like the bass track was always on track 1, but like when he was in another studio, it was on like track 8, and if I found 2 sessions where they were laid out the same, I knew they were done in the same studio.
Figuring out the puzzle of the story with like kind of that background technical information is kind of wild.
It's like a hillbilly Da Vinci Code. It was really fun, you know?
Little Billy Da Vinci Code. So you have 3 albums of content. You were on the Rolling Stone Nashville Now podcast, and you were talking about how they came together and why you put what song where. And you said it's all about the vibe. Is this something you do with all of the other artists to find the right vibe on an album? And was that process a little different in that Waylon is no longer with us and your father? Was there a different process that took place?
Yeah, because I mean, there was so, there's 2 answers that I guess, because on one hand, like, I don't always like pick album set lists like for people, but sometimes I'm good at it. And like when we did Charley, his last album, $1 a Day,
I'll never be rich, I found out too soon. Never could seem to get past the saloon.
we knew we were making a trilogy of albums, and we'd finished album 1, and here we were sitting with like 20 songs, 25 songs or something. And he was looking at like, I don't know what to do. And so in that moment I go, okay, let's hold on a second. I grabbed a pen and paper and I was like, here's $1 a Day. And here's the other stuff that we can use for the editing. But I felt like it just worked, and he was into it, So in this case, like, it was very much, I had a lot more material than I would normally have. And I normally am not suggesting the order of somebody's album. Like I said, it's worked a couple times, but in the case of this, I have a lot of material. So I didn't want to release it all at once, because I'm like, let's make this like last. Let's like, if there's enough stuff to release over multiple albums, then I'm going to stretch that out. And then, kind of make it like he's here for a minute. So in that way, it kind of was starting to come, like this one came into focus pretty immediately. Like I kind of knew what Songbird was going to be, and before I knew what the other 2 were going to be, but like I had to kind of get a bird's eye view of it. But I guess I'm always kind of thinking that way when I'm working on albums with people. Like I'm always thinking about the overview of the album and just what it is, what we're doing, and how many songs are like this and how many others. So I guess in a way, I like doing that. I like conceptualizing things on a big scale. So maybe, but in the case of this, I had so much material, and I had no other opinion involved. So I felt like, let's do it right.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say it like that, because there are a lot of great albums that I hear and I'm like, wow, this is an awesome, incredible album. And then I look and you're the producer of it, which I think goes to the style of you enhancing the folks that you work with, not necessarily putting your thumbprint on it, which is, I think, an incredible skill set that comes with production, because sometimes where it came from, right? So like in a slight variation on that last question, when you're working with other artists you don't have a familial relationship with, how does that impact your process? And like one specific example, I think, was the difference between Cat in the Rain and Price of Admission. But for Turnpike, you guys didn't know each other that well on the first one, and it sounds clean and different and pulled back a little bit from their earlier albums. And then you toured with them for a while and played piano at some really large gigs. And I think you may have posted something about it, or I read it somewhere, that you got to know them and their relationship to each other and to their fans during that period. Did that impact how you produced Price of Admission?
I'll tell you my perspective on it is that, like, I love Turnpike Troubadours. I knew them in passing. I knew Kyle, the fiddle player, because he was always really nice, and we had become friends early on. And he was like, and I always liked his side projects that he had going on. So we always stayed in touch. But and I liked Devin a lot. But we had done some shows with them. I didn't know them as a group, but when I got down there to Fame Studios, they were coming off that hiatus, so they were going through something on their own and kind of rebuilding their network within, with each other. So I felt like it was my job to like really just provide a really safe place for that to happen. And so we were there for like 3 weeks working on that. And then we ended up coming back to LA to finish it. That record had a long journey. And I think it was like one of those things where, like, I loved the album. What I learned from the fans very quickly was that well, like on Cat in the Rain, right, which is one of my favorite songs of theirs. Like, Evan, that song still makes me like emotional.
Gonna lay a little pity on a prodigal son who parted with his name. A little
was the first song he sent me, and just blew my brain. Yeah, it was so heavy and well written, and but there was like moments on that where we had like fiddle and accordion and like steel going on at the same time, like the Dylan records do, kind of. And this is of course completely subjective, and I have no problem with this, but I know that I got a lot of backlash from the mixes about like the fiddle wasn't loud enough on the whole record, and there was some stuff about how like Hank couldn't be playing both those instruments at the same time, which I get, like that's a literal thing, which is different, but I get it. It's actually like it's their thing. And I really don't, I wasn't trying to take any liberties with them. I think in the sense of what was going on, everybody was on board with what was happening because they were wanting to expand their sound a bit. And I felt like with Mean Old Sun, we really did that. Like that song really felt like a jam.
Headlong for the wall now, honey. Still coming up like a rose. Dead still in the garden, waiting for the revolution.
Sounds awesome.
But at the same time, like I listen to those fans, like because I don't want anybody upset with the records I do with them. So like the second time around, like we were really hypersensitive over things. Like we made sure of like a lot just to make sure it had the Turnpike sound. Because this time around, Evan deliberately had written they're probably their most country album to date.
Mhm.
And he wanted it to be a country album. And so we really went down the road of making it like a country album for country album fans and for Turnpike fans. And it was just like anything that was, a complaint, we try to take it into account. Because like, I mean, obviously, like, I don't want to create any controversy around these beautiful songs. Like, I don't say that like Turnpike fans think I ruined their career, but it's like it was hard backlash, and with my name all over it, anywhere you looked on the internet. So it was like, for me, it was hard not to see that and go like, man, I hate that they have to see that. What is it about me that like makes people like go right? He's the reason that I don't like this one thing, but I'm starting to like it. I didn't like it. I'm starting to like it, but it's still his fault. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm not trying to sound like it, like butthurt or bitter. Like I get it. Like when I love an artist and they do something different, I am the first person to be like, they shouldn't have done that. They should have stuck with what they had going, or whatever. But there's so much more complexity to just that statement that people don't realize, and so for me, like, man, I'm lucky every time Turnpike wants to work with me. I'm lucky every time Charley wants to work with me and American Aquarium and these guys that have come back, and I feel very fortunate about it. So I always want to do right by them and their fans, and I never ever want to do something that's like going to put them out of their comfort zone. A lot of producers do that. Like I hear lots of stories about people go in and they just make them do what they want them to do, make their version of that band, and that to me is not what it's all about. It's definitely not what it's all about, because everybody likes the stuff that the bands came up with when they didn't have anybody working with them. That was their favorite stuff. So like the idea is to like just enhance that and not with the formula,
Yeah. And I think that's kind of my experience. I was like a wild, rabid Turnpike fan has always been my favorite country band. And I found it to be refreshing and appropriate. It felt like they were making a conscious choice. It didn't, to me, feel like a change or a mistake or an error or a derivation. It felt like a conscious change. And when we're talking about kind of this other side of this project that you're doing with your dad's work, you didn't do a lot to change much either. And then that's been a big part of this. As we go into the next albums, and I know you won't talk about what's on it or any of those things, were there other changes that you felt you needed to do for these other ones that you said are going to be a little bit more fun and a little bit louder?
Yeah. Number two in Songbird, it's all a story, but number 3 is kind of different. And I can't really explain that any further. It will be different than the other two, but the next one that's coming and this one are kind of a pair, and they kind of tell a story in a way. And then the third one is very much the same batch of material. It's igniting. Not like you're going to like do anything weird to anything. It's just kind of hard to explain it. It's got its own thing. Like it will be like its own thing when it happens, Yeah, it's hard for me not to like want to talk about it, but the
Well, we
reality
have to
is,
ask, right? You know?
yeah, I mean, the thing is like in between these three projects, there's other things, and there's stuff that I'm getting and want to get out there. I mean, there's stuff on my mom that's like not been heard. There's stuff, live stuff. There's stuff from the Whalers. There's all this different stuff. So it's kind of like a little Marvel Waylon universe with all these tentacles going different directions, and I'm just trying to find different ways for all this stuff to be seen. Like everybody loves Spider-Man, but like Ant-Man's okay too, you know? And I feel like I gotta get the Ant-Mans out too, as well as the Spider-Mans, the Iron Man. You know what I mean?
In a world where Waylon Jennings music is everywhere.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Jennings
right.
family universe.
Exactly. Exactly.
Has this any of this process changed how you think about your own legacy? You've got quite a catalog of your own solo work as an artist, and how your kids might view it, either view it now or in the future.
Well, you know what's so funny is like my kids are very sweet, and they're like my daughter's was more excited that I got to do this with my dad, you know, than about anything else. But like my kids are very like, I don't know, they're really at this point they're older. So like I get to be like a regular human being and they understand what it's all about. You know what I mean? Like Bama and Blackjack, like they're proud of me for doing all this, you know, but I feel like it did change. It actually kind of made me feel like this was like, if you I got to a place here where I know that the world brought me to this spot, like however I got into this studio, and I'm in there in this moment when I decided to go through all this stuff. But I definitely felt like, wow, like this is a purpose for my life is to do this, because I'm pretty much the only person who knew them and knows the inside out of it like I do, that could go through this and translate it correctly. So in that way, it kind of gave me this kind of feeling of, okay, well, this is the next 5-10 years of my life, and I'm going to just dedicate my life to that. Even though I've got other projects like working in the studio, I mean, it's hand in hand with it. You know what I mean? It's like, I can move from one record to this and continue this process. So I just see a lot of work, and I see a goal line very clearly. And so I just wanted to get this first one out there, have it not leak, have it get out there, have people know about it, and then let them know there's more. And then it would be off to the races. So that's how I kind of feel. And I feel relieved, but I also feel determined to get everything else completed so that my kids don't have to go through it all again and try and make sense of it. Like, they're going to have to go through my shitty drive organization that I have working in the studio, you know, one day, but that would be a long time from now.
So you've been actively promoting this project on multiple platforms. You've been on many podcasts. You're doing your stuff. It's all over the place, and you're doing great work with that. Are there any questions that you were like really surprised by, or any questions that you thought you'd get that you never did?
I mean, not really, because everybody kind of has the same reaction to it. Like, it's like, wow, this is great. Like, why wasn't this released? You know? And it was like, that was the first question I had to answer myself in a lot of it, you know? So everybody kind of has a different take on it. You know, it's been cool. Like, I talked to this dude at WSM, and he was a real like songwriting guy. He just knew every songwriter from the old country stuff. So he was actually telling me shit in this interview that I didn't know about like Isaac Payton Sweat, and about the guy who wrote about, you know, Alan Reynolds wrote Dreaming My Dreams, wrote Wrong Road Again. And so I was like, oh, it's like during that session. But anyway, like, you know, I've learned things. You know, what was very cool though, was that like everybody in every direction, the minute this project came across their desk, like even like Billy Bob, like everybody pulled together to help, which was really cool. Like Billy Bob's in Texas painted Waylon Jennings is Still the King on the inside of the whole wall. And that was just like literally from Charlie Crockett's mouth to like that wall, because he was the one who was like, hey, you should just have this painted everywhere. And then, but everyone just did it. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
because of who he was, like the cosmic goodwill that he had is like just kind of caused it to go really well. Do you know what I mean?
It seems like it was so universally well received, and everybody was happy about it. And that doesn't happen a lot, as I'm sure you know, right?
Yes, that's been great. I'm just very happy about it. You know, like I knew it was special, but I'm just happy it's been so well received and everything went well. You know, I was like, how do I release this? How's it going to happen? And I just was like, you know what? I'm going to tell people I found it first. And I said, that will then I will just have control of this from that point forward. If I let everybody know that I found the shit before I even say there's going to be anything. And that really was the thing that allowed me the time to do it. And because the minute I made that post, which was Father's Day in 2024,
Mhm.
I found the stuff. They were saying it on the radio and stuff. It was like going everywhere in country and stuff. And I was like, okay, good. Now this got me ahead of the material because, you know, I didn't know, like, luckily we found a great way to do it with Sonny, but I didn't know, like, some of the stuff was during the years when he was at RCA. I didn't know what kind of legal things we were going to run into. So I knew that I just needed to establish that I had all this material first and tell everybody about it and then say, stand by. And then I could start feeding information and then we'll drop the song and announce it. And it worked perfectly, man. I was worried that it would just go under the radar, you know, but it worked perfectly. So I'm very happy with all of it and everybody who came on board at the 30 Tigers team and like 10K advertising that really like blew it up all over the billboards everywhere. Like everybody did such a good job. And all the artists that made all this stuff, it was almost like it was all too easy in a way because everything bloomed together so perfectly.
Based on what you said, it seems like this was a very easy process, you know, thousands of hours of tape you had to go through, legal battles,
Right.
balancing. Yeah, real easy. Yeah, it seemed like it was real easy.
What was it about? Well, that stuff it was not easy. And like I said, it felt like I was in a river and I just needed to float down it and I would end up where I was supposed to go. So I just kept my nose at like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're going to release this. We're going to do this. And, you know, we got it out.
One more question. Beyond the next two Waylon albums, what are you most excited about working on these days that you can talk about?
Oh man. I mean, I'm excited right now. I'm back in with Charley, Crockett, and then I'm going to go right out of that into American Aquarium again. And I love BJ and I love that band. I love Charley. Like Charley's one of my best friends. And so right now, this is the highlight for me of my year because I'm getting to work with these bands that I love and have worked with. And it's just such a joy to get to do albums with. I'm excited. I'm in the middle of an awesome project. And then in a week and a half, I'm going to be at the beginning of another awesome project. So that's what I'm excited about. Yeah,
I
man.
think we'll close it out because I know you gotta get back to work, man.
Yeah,
Stuff going on.
yeah, man. Now it's all good. I'm glad this worked
But,
out.
yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much for making the time for us. Thank you for listening. The best way to support us is to subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever podcast platform you use. If you want to see new episodes and more content delivered straight to your email inbox, please subscribe to our newsletter, countrymusicdads.substack.com. You can find everything we do on our website, countrymusicdads.com. And we'd love to hear what you think, so send us comments, suggestions, friendly banter on Instagram at countrymusicdads or via email, countrymusicdads@gmail.com. And of course, go check out Songbird by Waylon Jennings.
That's right.
So stay tuned for our next episode, and until next time, whether you're at the dance hall, the playground, or just folding some laundry, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.